Today we begin chapter 6 in Yechezkel, which can be found on page 1216. Last week we dealt with a pretty horrific chapter. I'm not going to tell you that this week gets much better, but it's not quite as graphic, though it is pretty graphic, compared to the previous chapter. Now in chapter 6, the one major thing we're going to do is, I guess two major things we're going to do. One is compare chapter 6 briefly to chapter 36. 6 and 36 are, so one of the things that I've mentioned briefly is that you have a lot of brother and sister chapters where a chapter will be kind of a negative prophecy in the first part of the book, and then there's a correlating positive prophecy in the second half of the book. So we'll do a very brief comparison there. And then the other thing we're going to do in chapter 6 is a little bit of intertextual learning between chapter 6 and chapter 26 in Vayikra, which is the Tochacha. And there's a particular section of this chapter and that chapter that it's almost definite that Yechezkel is literally quoting from that section in order to bring back certain thoughts to the people who are listening. Now, this is something we've spoken about a lot, but it's just background for this chapter, and that is the Jews do not accept that Yerushalayim is going to be destroyed. They just do not accept it. And Yechezkel is trying anything and everything to get this point across to them. Last chapter, he uses this very graphic, terrible allusions. He's even told to shave off his head, which is a biblical isur. It's a problem according to halacha. Right? We saw anything that he can possibly come up with, that he's going to use those opportunities to try to explain, right, all of his dramatic actions that he does about the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. All of that seems to fall on deaf ears in the continuation as he still tries to beat home this same idea. So in this parak, right, the main thing he does is he tries to, right, reference the Tochacha Vayikra as maybe another way of trying to get the point home to the Jewish people that this is going to happen. It is a fait accompli. It's only a matter of time, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So,
can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
So do the commentators make the point? So he's prophesizing to people who are outside of Jerusalem, who's out in exile.
Mm-hmm.
It's the destruction of Jerusalem is going to happen. So regardless of whether they believe him or not, at the end when it happens, they will know it happened. So they make a point as to why it's so important that he get the point across to them. Is it just to set up the proof that he is indeed a prophet, and therefore when he makes his consolations later, they would be more likely to believe him?
So that's the main point that one of our first two shiurim, we mentioned that idea, right? That there's, to some extent, there's a proof being built up here that he is in fact a prophet. And right, the challenge was normally prophets ask their constituents to do tshuva, but since this is the wrong crowd, it doesn't seem to really work, and he doesn't ask, right, the people to reform their ways, at least not here. So I think that's probably the main thrust. At the same time, I would say that there is this piece of prophets try to educate people, regardless of whether it's falling on deaf ears. And to some extent, I feel like the people became, like nose blind to like a smell. So they became like deaf to the prophets, because the prophets have always been saying that the Beit HaMikdash is going to be destroyed. It's been hundreds of years the prophets have been saying the Beit HaMikdash has been destroyed. Yechezkel happens to be doing this 3 years before the Beit HaMikdash is going to be surrounded and 5 years before it's going to be destroyed, which is, the timeline is much more crunched, and maybe that's why it's ramping up at this point. But right, to some extent, the Jews almost don't believe it anymore. It's like, okay, you say that. I'm sure there were false prophets prophesying that, in fact, it wasn't going to happen. They were going to make it through like they've always made it through. So you have this really hard, right, balance that Yechezkel is trying to deal with. And so I think that to some extent it's just to continue the education process that if you, in fact, do not follow the Torah and follow my, right, then this is going to happen. And you'll see, Ki ani Hashem Elokeichem, which we mentioned also, right? Because I am Hashem, your God. That's kind of the underlying thing. What I said to you is not for nothing. We're going to see that those types of language used by the prophet, trying to educate the people as well. But I think those points are all important.
How about how much of this is for us as well?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
That,
This is meaning we read the Tochacha, and the Tochacha is a terrible thing, and we mumble it and say it quickly and try not to think about it too much, right? But at the end of the day, right, having a prophet go back to that and say, look, guys, this is what's happening. That's powerful for us too, I think. It's a scary world. We live in a scary world. What can you say? So, Perek Vav. Vayihi devar Adonai Elai lemor, and God's word came to me. Ben Adam, sim panecha el harei Yisrael v'navei aleihem. Right? Put your face towards the mountains of Israel and prophesy towards them. So, just to note, right, just this, it's hard to miss when you just jump to chapter 36 for a moment. 1291. So if you just look at how it starts out, right? V'ata ben Adam hinavei el harei Yisrael v'amarta harei Yisrael shimu dvar Adonai. Right? So it's this same kind of introduction. It's not a normal introduction. Listen, O mountains of Israel. But the idea of starting these two prakim like this is certainly intentional. To create a brother and sister type of prophecy before and after the Korban, and a negative and positive. Fine. We'll deal with the positive prophecies when we get there. I just wanted to make the note and make the connection. V'amarta harei Yisrael shimu dvar Adonai Elohim ko amar Adonai Elohim leharim v'lagvaos lafikim v'lageayot hineni ani mevi aleichem cherev v'ibadati b'amotechem. So, right, to every single type of structure, whether it's a high mountain, a slight valley, a deep valley, a little hill, all of these different things, everything should, right, hear me, right? I'm going to bring a sword and destroy your bamot, right, your altars that often were found in these various locations. V'nashamu mizbechoseichem v'nishberu chamaneichem v'hifalti chalalechem lifnei gilulechem. So I will destroy your altars and I will break your chamanechem. So they're sun gods of some sort. So Rashi says that they were these kind of sun images they used to put on their roofs, and they would pray to them there. The other people who mentioned this sort of kind of a shrine that had a certain look to it. Whatever chamanechem are, they don't show up too much, which is going to be very important for us, comparing them to Vayikra Chaf Vav. When we go to 26 in Vayikra, we'll see them show up there too. And then I'm going to spread out your bodies in front of your idols. V'nasati es pigrei b'nei Yisrael lifnei giluleihem v'zeresi es atzmoseichem sivos mizbechoseichem. Right. So again, you're going to take the bodies of Bnei Yisrael in front of their idolatry, and you're going to sprinkle their bones around their altars. V'chol moshvoseichem he'arim techaravna, and all of your settlements, your cities will be destroyed. V'amamot tishamna lema'an yecharavu v'yashmu mizbechoseichem v'nishberu v'nishbesu gilulechem v'nigdeu chamaneichem v'nimchu ma'aseichem. So again, your cities and your altars and your lamot and your chamanechem will all be destroyed, and even your actions, right, will be undone. So basically, it's complete and utter destruction. There's going to be no remnant, and this very graphic image of Jewish bodies strewn out in front of their idols is a pretty terrible image, which we're going to come back to. V'nafal chalal b'sochechem v'yidatem ki ani Adonai. Right? And this is the first of many times where that, right, type of phraseology happens in the next two prakim, right? And right, there will be a chilul, right, amongst you, and you will know that I am God. Right? That basically this whole situation is going to leave, right, either desecration or dead bodies amongst you, and you'll know that I am God. V'hosarti biyot lachem pleitei cherev bagoyim v'zartem v'aratzot. And this we also mentioned in the previous prakim, right? That some will survive, and those, right, will, right, saviors from the sword among the nations, they will be scattered amongst the lands, right? So they're going to be scattered throughout the lands, and we saw they're going to be scattered with a sword kind of chasing them from behind, right? That's what we saw in the previous parak. So this is just fleshing that out a little bit more clearly. V'zachu pliteichem oti bagoyim asher nishbu sham asher nishbarti es libam hazoneh asher sar me'alai v'es ileihem hazanos acharei geluleihem v'nakotu bifneihem el haraot asher asu lachem l'chzar l'chol to'avoteichem. And this is what I was mentioning before to Dr. Lesnick's question, right? So, right, your survivors remember me among the nations where they will take captive, how I was anguished by their straying hearts that turned away from me, and by their eyes that strayed after their idols. And they will be disgusted with themselves for the evils they did through all their abominations. So again, this is a educational, right, moment saying you're going to understand, right, you're going to look back at this time in your history and you're going to reform your ways because of how bad you feel, right? But that was, you're going to see this as a terrible chapter, not just because of the decimation, but because you look back at yourselves and be like, whoa, what were we doing? V'yadu ki ani Adonai, and you will know that I am God. Lo el chinam dibarti lasos lahem hara'a hazot, and it wasn't just free words, right? I said this, I meant it, and it happened, and now you'll remember, right? And that's pretty heavy. So let's jump back to Vayikra Chav Vav. It's the very end of Vayikra, Parshas Bechukotai. So chapter 26 actually starts at the end of Parshas Bahar, and then the beginning of Bechukotai are, right, if you will listen to me, if you listen to my commandments, everything will be good, right? You'll get you'll have peace, you'll have rain in its proper time, right? You'll be able to chase away your enemies, everything's going to be great. That's the beginning of Bechukotai. So keep your hand on Bechukotai for 1 second and jump back to Yechezkel, this time to chapter 34. Yeah, so let's turn the page to 1290, the end of chapter 34. Actually, really the bottom of 1288. Right. V'nasati otam usvivot givati, so pasuk chavav, bracha v'harati hageshem v'ito gishmei bracha yiyu, v'nasan eit hasadeh v'es piryo haaretz, titei nivula v'yiyu alad masam levetach, v'yadu ki ani Adonai, v'shivrei es matos ulam, v'hitzaltim miyad ha'ovrim bahem. Right, and Vakimoti lahem mata, right? Even the language, right? The Hakimoti. If you look back in pasuk tet, right? Ufanisi alechem ufarisi eschem ufarisi eschem v'hakimoti esbriti itchem. You just have a lot of the language, the gishmechem beitam, right? The having the rain in its proper time. Right, that's pasuk gimel and asig gishmechem beitam. You're going to have good thing. A lot of this is meant to parallel, right, as a positive prophecy later, kind of the beginning of the Tochacha, which is important, as you'll see in a minute, in terms of what intertextual learning often does. Now, if you go back to Bechukotai again, and this time go a little bit further in, I believe it's pasuk lamed. Yeah. So you start with Chav Zayin. V'im bezos lo tishmeu li V'alachtem imi bekeri. So if you don't listen to me and you go wayward in your ways, v'alachti imachem b'chamat keri v'sarti eschem af ani sheva al chatosechem v'achatem b'sar b'neichem v'sar b'notechem tochelu. Okay, so that was a little bit referenced last week. We mentioned it last week in Perek Hey. In Perek Hey, it's not just parents eating children, but children eating parents. And now, v'hishmarati es bamotechem, v'hichrati es chamaneichem, v'nasati es pigreichem al pigrei gelulechem, v'ga'ala nafshi eschem. V'nasati es arechem charba, v'hashimoti es mikdeshechem, v'lo ariach bereach nichochachem. V'hashimosi ani es haaretz v'shamamu aleh oiveichem, hayoshrim ba, v'eschem ezareh b'goyim, v'harikoti aracharechem charev, Vaita artzachem shemamav arechem yucharaba. Okay, these 4 psukim here are incredibly parallel to what's happening in Yechezkel. So you, first of all, the word chamanechem does not appear anywhere else in the Torah. This is the only place where you get chamanechem, these sun images, and Yechezkel references that. It happens a couple more times in the rest of Tanakh, but it's a clear reference back to the Tochacha. You have the bodies being strewn out right in front of or next to the idolatry, the idols. You have the being thrown out or scattered amongst the nations with sword at their backs. You have the destruction of their cities and everything else. You have all of these elements in Yechezkel's rebuke that he's clearly referencing the Tochacha. Now, this intertextual reading comes from Dr. Genzel. So she points out that very often when you do this type of work, so what's the reason that Yechezkel is doing this for his people? Because he's trying to explain to them, my words are not stam, God didn't just say things. These things are going to happen. You did not listen to God's commandments, and this is the result of, this is what's going to happen because of that. Don't fool yourselves into thinking that you're all safe. He's still trying to get it into their heads that Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. So that's one big piece of this. But on the flip side, in our chapter, and in the last chapter, and in the next chapter, we don't have any salvation. We don't have any, and if you do listen to me, and if you do have a brit, and if everything else. So Dr. Genzel's point here is that, to some extent, ironically, by referencing the Tochacha, to some extent, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. By creating this intertextual analysis, if this in fact would ring in the ears of the people that were hearing it, he's referencing the Tochacha, so I know the Tochacha is, there's 2 sides to the Tochacha, Im lo tishma'u, then all this happens. But im b'chukusai telechu, if you do in fact listen to my commandments, then there's still hope. And there's this eternal covenant where God never forsakes us despite the fact that it really feels that way when we don't listen in these moments. So, to some extent, she feels that even in the midst of this terrible prophecy, maybe there's a glimmer of hope, a light at the end of the tunnel, that you could read into it by virtue of the connection to Bechukotei. So let's jump back, unless there's any questions.
Beside the idol worship, which, I know in and of itself is a big thing, so what else were the Jews doing that was
so it depends who you ask in terms of prophets, So one of the things that we focus so much on in Melachim was actually this very point. This actually very beautifully dovetails with our learning Sefer Melachim, because Sefer Melachim was all about the lack of leadership of the kings by virtue of the fact that idolatry spread throughout the land, often as a direct correlation to certain acts of the kings. At the same time, when you read some of the other prophets, you get a lot more of the social things that happen. In the next chapter, we get a little bit of a reference to the flood, words of Hamas and other things that some connect back to the flood times, which will kind of bring with it all of the images of the social injustice that was going on.
during Noah's time?
Yeah, during Noah's time. But I would say that for a lot of the prophets, the Bamot idolatry theme is a very prominent one. Yeah.
I heard once Rabbi Shulman, my brother's rabbi in St. Louis, on one of his tapes, he said that idol worship really, talk about 3 sins that are very bad. the idol worship includes, generally speaking, all three.
Right. If you have Molech, so you give your children over to Molech, that they die by fire, and there's other
Relations that they
right.
shouldn't have. So
Right,
they said
the
that
whole
they-
story with Midian and right with Pinchas and Shevet Shimon, very often, right, the women were using the idolatry to get to, right, adultery and other things like that. So certainly there are connections that are made. It's still very high, meaning you'd want that developed a little bit more in Malachim or here if that was kind of the focus. But you're right. The idolatry, the amoral notion that you just kind of poke the right God and get what you want, right, normally tends to lead to a pretty immoral existence.
I mean, just thinking, right, about how they used to do idol worship and how they used to sacrifice how they sacrificed humans,
Right.
and all the relations with the temple goddesses and that.
Right.
The idol worship seemed to encompass
Right.
all three a lot of times, whereas the other two could be done without idol worship. Idol worship seemed to just the whole idea
Right.
of it.
Right. It's an interesting perspective.
It was corporate.
Understood. So that might be another way to slice this, but
I think it's interesting too when he says he calls out to the mountains. Mountains were so pivotal in Jewish history when you think, Matan Torah was at Har Sinai, and so many of the prophets were buried in mountains, and the curses and the blessings were done on two different mountains.
So the bamot were also very often placed on mountains. The reason was because, if you think about it, right, if you're trying to create an image of power when you don't have, right, what we're able to build today to create these superstructures where we can seat lots and lots and lots of people, that everyone can see it, right? It's very hard to do that, right, if you don't have that ability. So back in the day, the way you did that was by doing things on mountains, so everyone could kind of see what's going on. So I think it's a very powerful statement. So I think, yes, mountains played a huge role in Jewish history, as in, I think, all types of, big public displays, right? Even the Beit HaMikdash is on a mountain, meaning everything is on a hill. Everything. So, yeah. Okay, so Pasuk Yud Aleph. Ko amar Adonai Elohim hakei b'chapecha ureka b'raglecha ve'amar ach el kol ta'avot ra'ot Beit Yisrael asher b'cherev bara'av uvadever yipolu. Right. So again, this is a kind of a morning, more morning, not like morning night, but morning lamentations type of situation. So, right, clap your hands and stamp your foot, right? So very often in prophecy, it doesn't mean dance. It's not like a rikud here. This is more like slapping in distress, or stomping in distress, right? And you have a certain is this it's a onomatopoeia, right? It's like a alas. It's this calling out. It's this groan. For all of the toavot, all these terrible abominations, and which led to b'cherev of v'dever yipolu, right? The trifecta, the sword, the famine, and the pestilence that you fell by. Varachok badever yamut v'karov b'cherev yipol. So those who got away would die of pestilence. Those who were close by sword. Vanishar v'natzur v'ra'av yamut. And those who were stuck in the siege would die by famine. V'chilesi chamasi bam. And my wrath will be spent on them. V'yidatem ki ani Adonai biyot chalalechem b'toch gilulechem sivivot mizbechoseichem el kol giv'a rama b'chol rashi ha'arim v'tachas kol eitz ra'anan v'tachas kol eila avuta makom asher natnu sham reich nichoach l'chol gilulechem. Right? Basically, a restatement of all of the things that you're going to find, bodies strewn everywhere in front of this, in front of that, under this, under that, all the places asher natnu sham reich nichoach, which again, if you remember right, is a harkening back to, right, the reach nichoach, that God is not going to smell in the tochacha. V'nasati es yadi aleihem, v'nasati es ha'aretz hashemama, u'mishama mimidbar divlata bechol moshvosehem ve'adu ki ani Adonai. And again, the utter destruction that will come out, you will all know that I am Hashem. Who would be there? Give me 1 second. Okay, so we have a couple minutes, so we're going to start Perek Zayin. Perek Zayin is Yechezkel's next attempt, and so here we're going to start this. I don't think we're going to finish this chapter.
What were the people supposed to do at this point? Or in other words, it's coming. What were they supposed to do?
Right, so that's part of the problem, is that Yechezkel never gives them an action to do. Right, and he never gives them a tshuva to do. He never gives them a mitzvah to do. He just kind of says it's coming, which I'd imagine people who were in exile and already were pretty down and out didn't necessarily take that as like a happy action-based type of situation. It probably, if anything, just broke their will even more. I think that this is, to some extent, it's the contraction before the actual, right, turning things around. So I don't know that there is anything they're supposed to do at this point, right? There is a notion almost of mourning before it even happens. There's this notion of, right, they're almost in a state of avilut or aninut or something. They're not thinking past, right, the impending destruction. It's kind of just getting very into, right, what's about to happen. So yeah, I'm not sure that's a very happy answer, but I think that's what he's doing right here. So chapter 7, Perek Zayin, is a little bit of a continuation of this attempt to knock this idea into the Jewish people's heads, and I would say that the methodology he uses now is to try to focus on how imminent what is about to happen is, right? And we're going to see a multi-use of the words like kates, or ba'a, or ba, right? That this is coming, or this is the end, things that are imminent. And he's going to kind of use those words poetically in a way to try to make his point more emphatic. So I think we might have to stop. We're going to stop probably midway, but let's just start. We have at least 10 minutes. So Vayhi dvar Adonai Eli lemor, and the word of God came to me speaking. V'ata ben adam k'amar Adonai Elohim la'admas Yisrael kates ba hakates al arba kanfot haaretz. Right. So an end. The end has come upon the four corners of the land. Right. So ending is coming. The end. Ata hakates alayich v'shilachti api bach v'shavatitich kidrachayich v'nasati alayich is kol ta'avosayich. Right, so the end is upon you, and I will send my anger onto you, and you'll be judged according to your ways, and right, I will give to you all of your abominations. Lo sachos eini alayich v'lo echmol ki derachayich alayich etein v'so'avosayich v'sochech tiyana v'datem ki ani Adonai. I will not show any mercy. I will not, right, be slow to anger with you. I will, because of your ways, because of your abominations that are amongst you, and you'll know that I am God. Ko amar Adonai Elohim ra'a achas ra'a hinei ba'a. right? One evil at a time is coming. Kates ba ba hakate, kates ba ba hakates hikits alayich hine ba'a. Right? So again, it's you can't miss it, right? The end is coming, the end is now, coming end now, right? And it's meaning the idea is to try to create this urgency, to try to create this realization that I know you've had prophets who have told you the Beit HaMikdash will be destroyed. I know, I get that. But now it's really happening. It's really, this is not a matter of 50 years, this is a matter of a couple of years. And this is as imminent as you're going to get. Ba'a hatzifira ilecha yoshev haaretz ba ha'et karov hayom mehuma velo heid harim. So, right, the dawn has come against you, O dweller of the land, the time has come, the day of tumult is near, and it is not joyous shout of the mountains. Ata mikarov veshpoch chamasi alayich v'chilesi api bach v'shafatich kidrachayich v'nesati alayich Yechezkel to'osayich. Again, the repetition is just highlighting, right, it's coming, this terrible thing is coming, you're going to be judged, the abominations that you've done are going to basically fall on you. Right? Right, it's almost like a broken record. He's basically saying three things. He's saying, it's coming, the end is here, and it's because of all of your abominations, and you'll know that I'm God. Right? That's right. I'm not going to have any mercy. It's all the same thing, and it's all repeated again because you get a sense that Yechezkel is desperate to try to convey this to his constituency. Hine hayom hine ba'a yatz'a hatzfira tzatz hamata parach hazadon. Right? It's coming. Right? Dawn has gone forth, the rod has sprouted fruit, wantonness has blossomed. Right? Hachamas kam lamate resha lo mehem velo mehamonam velo mehem velo noha bahem. Right? Very poetic, his language. Here is the mention of Hamas that I mentioned.